Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to GatherVerse AI Summit 2024. We're thoroughly happy to see all of you today that have come to join us at this extraordinary summit, this two-day summit, where we have speakers from around the world that have come to convene with us and to be able to share with us today. Today, our kickoff session, our roundtable discussion, in dealing with the AI-powered metaverse, the impact of spatial computing in the AI era, as we find ourselves on the heels with just a few days at Apple, which is already sold out, the Apple Vision Pro is already making extraordinary leaps and bounds. And we're also seeing with platforms such as Meta and HP and Microsoft, these giant behemoths of technology, we're seeing incredible growth and we're seeing distribution. But we're about to see more in a completely different way. But rather than let me tell it, we've assembled experts here. Tom Furness, Dr. Tom Furness, who comes to us from the Virtual World Society, who is a pioneer and whom many refer to as the godfather of AI, who is part of XR. Tom, you don't get AI, but of XR, also one that has been at the service of building immersive technologies for years. Whilst at the same time, we have Luis Rosenberg, who comes to us with a storied history of XR technology. For the audience, those that are with us today who may be unfamiliar with XR, meaning extended reality, virtual, augmented reality, and immersive technology. Luis also here when it comes to AI. We're happy to have both of you gentlemen with us today. We have a lot of ground to cover, but before we do that, I'd like for you each to share a little bit more about your backgrounds. I think it's important for this discussion that we're launching into and to be able to talk about the book that's coming that I think is a must for everyone to get a hold of. Dr. Furness, we'll kick off with you.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and at this summit. I think it's great work that GatherVerse brings to our community. Lots of voices, people who have things on their heart and minds that they want to share. And so this is a great opportunity, and I thank you for pairing me with Luis. Certainly, he's a giant in this industry, and you'll probably hear from him about his new book, of which I've fortunately had an opportunity to participate in producing it. And so, yeah, I'm the old guy in the room. I've been at this for about almost 60 years. Working on the how do we get bandwidth to and from the brain of the human. And I started out, and my first gig was 23 years working for the U.S. Air Force, and since that time, being a professor for another 33 years, and spinning off 27 companies in this particular domain, and a bunch of patents and things like that. But it's interesting that to me, AI is nothing new. I mean, it was in my super cockpit, and I can talk about that a little bit later. But this is back in the 80s, where we were actually putting these kinds of components, R2D2, into the back seat of the cockpit and things like that. But to me, this is a thrilling time, and through my experience of these about these 58 years. I feel that it's time that these pieces come together. I agree with you with your introductory remarks about the metaverse. Metaverse isn't dead. I mean, it's the hyping, it's the problem here. And the hyping's always been there with AI and with VR and all these things. And we want to look at the possibilities, but we have to be practical in what is really the human side of this. And I think that's what is espoused in the GatherVerse. It's really about humans first. How do we use these things as tools to help us accomplish what we want to accomplish in the world? So grateful to be here. That's a little bit of background about me. I'm just happy to still be alive and have a chance to share in this.
Tom, thank you. We're very happy to have you with us, and we're happy that you're still alive. Luis, you're up. Why don't you let us know what's going on with you and your history to share with the audience with us today? Thank you.
Sure. So first, great to share the stage with Tom and you, Chris, and I really appreciate the mission of GatherVerse, and I definitely share the same guiding philosophy as Tom, which is that humans come first. And my whole career has really been about how to enable technologies to amplify and enhance and help people. And so I've been a technologist in really focusing on virtual reality, augmented reality, and artificial intelligence for over 30 years. I started in 1991 in virtual reality labs at Stanford and NASA. And then I went to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base to where I really focused on my primary research for many years, which was mixed reality. How do you combine the real world and virtual worlds in ways where you can create a unified, believable, single reality that that people will experience as not virtual content and real content, but one reality. And now that's called mixed reality. Back when I started, there was no name for it. Then it became called augmented reality. Now it's called mixed reality. But and we'll talk about mixed reality coming up. But then in 1993, I founded one of the early virtual reality companies, a company called Immersion Corporation. It's actually still around today. It's over 30 years old. We brought it public in 1999. But I left in 2002 and founded an augmented reality company called Outland Research that Google acquired in 2011. And then in 2014, I founded my current company, Unanimous AI, which is an artificial intelligence company, really a very different type of AI company. Instead of focusing on using AI to replace people, we focus on using AI to connect groups of people together and amplify collective intelligence, group intelligence. We do that in traditional environments and also in immersive environments. And we could talk more about that. But ultimately, I spent the last 30 plus years working in VR, AR, and AI. And I really believe that these technologies can help humanity to do amazing things. And these technologies are coming together in a way that's never happened before. They're really coalescing. I think that's terrific. I also write a lot about the dangers of this coalescence, because there's, the power of enabling AI in immersive environments. It's a power that can do amazing things, but it also can be used by bad actors to do terrible things. And I think it's really important to raise awareness about that and help policymakers and regulators prepare for what's coming.
Indeed. Gentlemen, we're very happy to have you here, and thank you for those brief remarks and introduction as we head into this discussion. To the audience that's here, what's most pressing about when it comes to AI for you? Feel free to share that with your neighbors or your colleagues who are watching this here today, and those of you, whether on the Meta campus or other different campuses here that assemble with GatherVerse. What is it that's most pressing when we look at this intersection of AI and the metaverse? But you absolutely left off with something residual that should be considered, Luis, is that what happens when the technology becomes more advanced than the technologist? And it seems like, Tom, that those times have come to pass, and with the great consideration that when we look at policy and legislators, typically that they will be able to be advanced enough in their own understanding and capability to keep up with where we're at. But now if the technology has become more advanced than the technologist, what does that mean for our policy and legislators with the relationships that we hope to have and that we've had for years when it comes to helping them set the trajectories on what we're working on? But we'll put a pin in that for a second, because I want to come to this word, spatial computing. Some platforms will say we're the metaverse and some extended reality. And Apple says, hey, Tim Cook, we are spatial computing, which is not a new terminology, as we all know. It's been around for some time. But when we start to think about spatial computing as the very forward-thinking Ori Embar of AWE said, and expressed just last year, I thought it was very appropriate that that XR is the interface to AI. And Luis, with what you just brought about, now we're not dealing with a single variable equation of artificial intelligence. We're heading very soon, Tom, Dr. Furness, into a time almost present to where we'll be interacting with AI in hyper-realistic, immersive simulated environments. But what I want to start off with is our first question. It's how does spatial computing in the AI-powered metaverse differ from traditional virtual environments?
You asking me first?
Yes, sir. Please.
Okay. Well, one of the things that's is clear to me is that over the years we have seen the adoption of various tools to help us do our jobs, and one of the things that has been lacking in the spatial computing area is the actual building of worlds, generating the spatial content. And because certainly with spatial computing, with XR, the virtual reality, what happens is we're building this transportation system for our senses. And it works so well because what it does is puts us in a place by putting us, puts a place in us by putting us in a place. And so we remember, our spatial memory is awakened, and we remember these things. It's a really powerful way to get bandwidth to and from the brain. But the problem has been, we have to make the content, and we haven't had the tools to make the content in the past, other than just CAD tools that have been used for design of other things. And so we've used this two-dimensional tool in order to generate three-dimensional content, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to do that. Well, now we have this AI that's come upon us in a new way. I mean, in the old days when I was working with it, it was mainly expert systems. We're looking at ways of decision support systems, things like that. But now we actually have a capability that communicates more directly to the human. And when we have now an assistant, a tool that we can use and say, hey, I'm thinking about building this virtual world, and I want to have a sort of a house over here, and I want to have a tree here, and the sun's over here, and maybe a mountain over here, and then bang, it's there in 3D, and you can walk into it. And you look around and said, well, that's not exactly what I had in mind. I think I'd rather tweak it this way and this way. Now what happens is you have a partner, a three-dimensional partner, that content now can be built very quickly. From that standpoint, it is an amazing tool to help us with spatial computing, because spatial computing is going to be no better than the content. All the delivery, I don't care what delivery mechanisms we have to get bandwidth to and from the brain. It's what the content is that's key, and how we generate that content, how we interact with that content, and what does it do to us. Those are the important things. So I see this as a real boon for actually generating the content that we need in the future, as we go in the future.
We're going to come back to that in just a moment, Dr. Furness, because I have a follow-up. But first, Luis, will you please chime in on that, please?
Sure. So on this issue of spatial computing, and you asked, how does spatial computing differ from traditional virtual environments? And part of this is a nomenclature issue. And you mentioned, Apple is talks about their technology as a spatial computer, and I think that's interesting and powerful. But to me, if you really really listen to how they describe spatial computing, and if we want to compare that to, say, virtual worlds, I see spatial computing as really a synonym for mixed reality, but with the notion of a spatial operating system. And Apple's doing amazing things with the spatial operating system, using eye tracking as input to make it natural, to make it intuitive. And so I think spatial computing is just another path in this idea that computing is about people. It's not about hardware. And the thing that I admire about what Apple's done with the Vision Pro is they really are focused on people, on putting people into a world where the content that's useful to them doesn't exist on a flat screen. It doesn't exist on their little phone that they're staring down on. The content that's valuable to them is just spatially placed all around them in the locations that are useful. And so when I'm thinking about the difference between spatial computing and virtual worlds, it's really about the difference between entering a virtual space that's fully simulated, where you, the person, are inside that space, versus keeping the user, keeping the human in their natural environment and giving them the content that's most useful to them, but doing it in an immersive, natural way, so it just feels part of the real world.
Sure.
And again, we've called that augmented reality or mixed reality for decades. I personally think that is the future of computing, mixed realities. And I've actually been arguing and advocating for mixed reality really since 1991. And it was really the focus of my effort when I started my career, for a really simple reason, which is that when I started working in just purely virtual worlds in the late 80s, I felt like this is amazing technology, but people don't want to be confined to a fully simulated world. And I think it's great for short periods of time. It's great for specific experiences, whether they're entertainment experiences or professional experiences that last a couple hours, similar to like losing yourself in a movie. But beyond that, people do not want to be cut off from the real world. And that's one of the things that, for people who've been in the field for a long time, way at the beginning, the headsets were really heavy and cumbersome, and people didn't want the experience for a long time. And people would say, well, when the headsets are really lightweight and the graphics are better, people will be good with it. And I always thought, no, like they don't want to be cut off from the real world. They want both. They want the real world and the virtual world. And I think we're finally getting to a point with the Vision Pro and with some other devices that are coming out, both from Meta, from HTC, finally getting to the point where you can create a mixed reality where people really feel like there's just one reality and they're just going to do work. They're going to do work in that one reality. It includes virtual content in the place they need it, at the time they need it. But it doesn't cut them off from the coffee cup on their desk, and it doesn't cut them off from the other people in their office and in their room. And so I look at spatial computing, the phrase spatial computing, as a way of just reminding developers that this is about putting content into our natural spatial world, which is the way our brains were meant to receive information. It's as Tom says, and I say this all the time, it's how we remember information. It's like our memories are spatial. This is how computing should be, and we're finally getting to that point. And so yeah, I think it's a very, very exciting time for the field, and we're bringing AI into it as well, which is, as Tom mentions, is a critical part of actually allowing the content to be created, because that's the next step. You can have all the technology you want, but without content, nobody has anything to do.
Indeed, and I want to go a bit off the tracks here for a moment, because this is the GatherVerse, and we're talking about spatial computing, and it's so present because we're talking about this Apple Vision Pro, Dr. Furness, and so it's I guess the metaverse is cool again, apparently, but that's fine and neither here nor there. But I want to ask this question, not the one we see on the screen, audience. I have to ask, because this conversation is begging to be asked, of this question is, Dr. Furness, why do we extend reality? We talk about extending reality. I often say if we're going to extend reality, then we must bring reality with it. But why do we extend reality when this reality I see at the moment is perfectly fine? But as technologists and explorers, we're building and we're gaining off of something. And I know, Dr. Furness, you've been such an advocate, and you are such an advocate. We talk about unlocking the mind, if you will, whether you'll go off and venture off into this particular vertical or not, per answering this question, sir. But Why do we extend reality, and what is the importance thereof in this present time?
Ah, that's a really great question, Chris. Thanks for that. You know, I believe it, and what happens, these tools we have extend our humanity, make us more human, make us comprehend more. I mean, I remember a conversation I had with Jaron Lanier. This has been gazillion years ago, and we were talking about, you know, the VR does not take the place of the real world, or mixed reality does not take the place of the real world. What it does is augment it. And what do we mean by augment it? It means our ability to comprehend it, to behold it, to take it in us. And one of the things we were talking about at the time, and we were pretty crude at the time, but this idea of a virtual forest. What if we could build a virtual forest? And in that virtual forest, we actually become a tree, and we grow up in this forest. And one of our friends that's with us is actually an earthworm. Another one is a bird, and another one's a squirrel. And we're sort of there together, realizing there is an ecosystem here. There's a cooperation that's taking place. And we realize that, wow, the reason we're able to grow is because of some programming to begin with in the seed. We're taking nutrients from the soil. We have our branches stretched out. We're getting photosynthesis. Rain is coming. All of these things. And we begin to see how that all works. Now, does that take the place of a real forest? Absolutely not. But when we go into a real forest and look at a tree, we comprehend way more of the glory of a tree than we would otherwise, and the bird and the earthworm, and how all of these work together. So the idea is that it expands our comprehension. It adds more, and we can see things we couldn't see otherwise. We can see, you know, even into the infrared and into ultraviolet. We can see flowers the way a bumblebee sees flowers, and therefore understand more and appreciate more the wonder of nature. So it's there, it's been there all along. We just didn't have the ability to see it or hear it or touch it in a way that we can now with these new tools that we have.
And as a follow-up, Dr. Furness, why is this so important for platforms and so many of the thousands of people that are with us today? Why is this so important for us to be able to even to consider the relevancy of becoming that bumblebee or a blade of grass when it comes to the metaverse and virtual environments? And what does that mean for education and generations in our youth that are arriving with these technologies that we're inventing and that we're building and producing?
Well, we have to understand that this whole process of evolution has been ongoing for millions of years. And here we are, a little speck in that period of time. And that we need to appreciate, you know, the wonder and the way that nature works and the way it experiments, the way that these transitions take place on a gradual way, and realize that we're a part of that. It's not like we're separate from it. We're a part. And the decisions we make can interrupt or disturb that process. So if we're going to save our planet, which is really, as we all know, we've done a number on our planet, right? Mother Nature's going to divorce us here before too long. We need to appreciate that we do no harm to each other or to our environment. And in order to know that what is harm, and we have to appreciate these things that perhaps can only or can be better communicated to us, and especially with our young kids coming along with these new technologies than ever before. So it expands our comprehension.
Thank you, Dr. Furness. And Luis, this brings us into a perfect segue when we talk about the risks that are going to be associated with the AI-powered metaverse. And I think it's a good time to be able to bring in our next reality, the book that you and Alvin Graylin, who couldn't be with us today due to travels, and then such as Dr. Furness and even Peter Diamandis has had an opportunity to be able to share some expressions Why did you write this book, and why are we releasing it now? And what's the importance of it, especially with the consideration of the risk of AI now introducing these tools to those that are building and developing the metaverse?
Yeah, so Alvin and I wrote this book, Our Next Reality, to really focus on the merger of immersive technologies like VR and AR and MR and artificial intelligence to create what ultimately will be this AI-powered metaverse. And when we talk about the AI-powered metaverse, we talk about it broadly in the idea that it could be fully simulated virtual world, as most people kind of think of the metaverse. But I also think people will more and more start to think of the metaverse as a mixed reality, where the metaverse is the real world embellished and enhanced and expanded with virtual content everywhere you go. And people won't think about entering the metaverse or leaving the metaverse. They'll just think we will just be in the metaverse because it is with us all the time. It's and so that's this next reality that is coming, and it will be imbued with artificial intelligence. Everything about it, how it gets created, will be intelligent. The world itself will react to us intelligently. It will know us. We walk into a room, it will know us, and it will modify that room for us. And so now we're talking about a reality where the world itself has different physical properties. It has intelligence. It has intelligence that gets to know each of us and change for each of us. And that's really exciting and really interesting and amazing things you can do for education but also really scary, because an intelligent world could be used as the ultimate form of persuasion or manipulation or influence. And so we wrote this book almost as a debate, and both Alvin and I see both sides of the picture, but Alvin took the positive side in the book, and I took the negative side in the book. And so I focus really very much on what are the how could this go wrong? How do we have to protect it against things that could go wrong? And my biggest fear at the highest level is if you imagine that, okay, now we're gonna immerse everybody in a world where immersive content just is everywhere you go. It's AI powered, so it can adjust to all of us in real time. And it could be controlled by third parties, corporations. And unless there's good regulations and policy, those corporations, what are they going to do with that technology? Well, right now, we all live in a different world. We live in this internet world, right? And if we're using major platforms for social media and other technologies that people use all the time, all the major corporations, they make their money by selling influence. That's if you're using Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or anything, they're making their money by selling. So we have to assume that when this AI-powered metaverse gets unveiled, and if there's not restrictions, these companies are going to make their money by selling influence. There's nothing wrong with that, but we have to realize that when it's AI-powered influence, the capabilities are really, really dangerous. And so in this AI-powered metaverse, there will be artificial agents that are deployed that look like humans and sound like humans and communicate like humans. They will be pitched to us as virtual employees that are, so we don't need if I have a virtual store, I don't need to employ a human. I can have an AI agent that's or AI assistants that are with us all the time, helping us. And those are amazing things. But if they can influence us, they will be far more powerful as tools of influence than the best human salesperson that's ever existed. And that's because these AI agents, we can think of them as virtual salespeople or virtual spokespeople. These AI agents will be trained on cognitive psychology and sales tactics and marketing tactics, and they will be given an agenda if they're allowed to. And that agenda could be Chris walks into a space and there's a virtual agent, and the goal of that agent is to sell you something. And that's actually the innocent one, selling you something. It could also be to deliver misinformation or disinformation or propaganda, but it's given it's given an influence objective. It's going to now it's not just an advertisement that pops up. It's going to engage you in conversation to convey that influence. And so it's going to engage you in friendly conversation, make you relaxed. It's going to then do what a great salesperson does. It's going to start pitching you, but it's going to watch your reactions to how it pitches you. So it's going to pitch you on a new car or some idea or piece of misinformation. It's going to watch your facial expressions. It's going to listen to your vocal inflections. It can even, the hardware that we'll be using could detect your pupil dilation, can detect your changes in your blood pressure. So it could be using all of those things to adapt its tactics. And so you will be in a conversation with a salesperson that has access to infinite information, that's trained on all of the world's most sophisticated sales tactics, that can read your emotions off of your face and your voice and potentially changes in your blood pressure, and is going to pursue influence objectives with the power of AI. Like, what chance do we have to resist that? That is the ultimate danger, unless it's restricted. I usually refer to that as the AI manipulation problem, because the problem, so much of what regulators are focused on right now with AI is, AI can be used to deploy traditional misinformation, create documents at scale, fake news at scale. That's real, but that's not the danger that's coming. The danger that's coming is that we're going to be in a world where AI agents and humans coexist. It's hard to tell the difference, and the AI agents will outmatch us in their ability to manipulate us unless it's not allowed. And but if we put good regulation in place and policy in place, and we say, you can't do that. You can't put an AI into an immersive world and read people's facial expressions and blood pressure and pupil dilation to optimize influence. Then we can have all the benefits of the great things we can do if you flip all those powers around and use them for good. But it's been an effort to get regulators to focus on this because they're not familiar with that risk. Mm-hmm. It's an interactive risk, and they've never had to regulate an interactive risk. They've only had to regulate pieces of risky content. And so it's about educating regulators that AI combined with immersive media creates new dangers that they just haven't dealt with before.
And I have a concern with that, because when we think about this technology of, let's say, the Kodak avatar, which our friends and some are working not only at Meta but other platforms, where it's this capability to be able to bring in at human eye resolution, human scale, into this virtual simulated environment myself, and almost indiscernible, if you will, to the human eye of who is that I'm talking to and speaking, as if we are sitting here right now in real time. My concern is that at the end of the day, when I've scanned my body into this high fidelity environment that's being rendered out in real time, suspended with AI, who owns my likeness when it comes to my data? Because, Luis, you bring up a great point, and it's important, audience. We're so used to, in this information age of typing and interacting with different various platforms and even in social constructions. But the idea has never been, Dr. Furness, it seems to me, to just only stare and tap and look at our devices, but one day to actually get inside and operate within our devices, if you will, even with, as Luis has talked about, mixed reality. But Dr. Furness, I think about spatial computing, we think about extended reality and the design schematic, the real life capability, and you have a credible history in dealing with what's external to us when it comes to interfaces. What concerns might you have when it comes to immersive technology that's being augmented into this world, now that this world is in a lot of ways machine readable when it comes to the cloud capabilities, knowing full well that with things that I know that you have been innovating in patents and things that haven't yet surfaced. Because part of my concern as I was sitting there listening to Luis is I'm not necessarily, I am concerned with what we see, but I'm more concerned with what we don't see. And a lot of what we don't see has been invented, at least to the paper and to the white paper and schematic, with folks such as yourself and others. But now those tools have arrived for us to have the capability to build these things. So when we're dealing with spatial computing, when we're dealing with one another in a virtual setting and environment, what concerns might we have, Tom or Dr. Furness, when it comes to this?
Well, one of the things when I was working on the super cockpit for the Air Force, cockpit that you wear provides a circumambience of three-dimensional information to your eyes and your ears and your hands. And we decided, that's way too much you can handle. There's so much going on so fast. You have all these sensors in the airplane. You have the bad guys that are trying to do things to you. You have the good guys you're trying to coordinate with. You're trying to perform a mission and things like that. It's overwhelming. And so how do you build an interface that lets you handle this? Because you want to have human intelligence in the loop, along with machine intelligence working together. And that's why I mentioned R2D2. R2D2, the whole idea was to have sort of a friend, a machine friend that helps you handle it. And I think that's what we need for what we're talking about with the metaverse and AI. We need to have our own agent that actually uses AI to determine what the other AI is doing to us. So we can use AI to fight AI in a way, because R2D2, you say, hey, what do you think about what this guy's telling me, this salesman? And R2D2 says, hey, you want to know where he's coming from? Who's supporting him? All these kinds of things. And you said, don't believe a word he's saying, because he's looking at your eyes. He's looking just what you said, Luis, what the artificial intelligence can do. So what this does is give you as an assistant to help you sort through all the stuff that's going on. And he gives you a seal of approval. Yeah, this guy's legitimate or whatever. Now, you got to be able to trust this R2D2 as well. And so it goes on and on and on. Who are you going to trust? And unfortunately, what's going to happen, I think one of the downside of this is you aren't going to trust anything. Everything is going to be, somebody's putting a number on me. And we already know that whenever we log into some app is sucking up everything it can about us. And so I think what will happen, this is how we're going to grow as humans. I think we're going to change our psyche to where we are cautious about these things. We understand that bad things can be done. Now, where this really becomes important is with kids and with young people who are really growing and trying to learn these things. And that's the precious spirit we need to protect. And that's really where I think a lot of regulation needs to be looked at. And the community the community we're in almost has to self-regulate, because the politicians aren't going to be able to do it. They don't have a clue what's going on. And that's why this organization is so important. The GatherVerse, why the Virtual World Society is so important. And the other programs there, the NGOs that are trying to be the watchdogs and say, yeah, but we've got in order for you to get the good housekeeping seal of approval, you have to use these kind of principles. And we will watchdog you. We'll use AI to watchdog you. And so I think that's the ethos that we're going to be getting into. Is there's another thing we have to remember, is that AI is not human. AI doesn't have feelings. AI doesn't know what love means. They know what the definition of love is, but they can't love. And so there is no spirit there. And I think one of the things that we need to develop as we're going into this new world with these new tools, which are fantastic and so fun and can advance our civilization, is we need to rely upon our spirit and have our spirit tell us about these things. Because when you're looking at something artwork that's generated by AI or music or whatever, there's a spirit in it of an actual artist versus virtual. Now, there's nothing wrong with a virtual artist, as we talked about it. And because a virtual artist, in a way, is a great way for us to practice our art and how to get the best out of us. Because it can throw out something and say, hey, what do you think about this? And again, as I mentioned before, we can tweak it and optimize it. So it's working together with the tools, and it's not being afraid of them. It's not fear, it's respect. I think that we need to transition from this idea of fearing something. I mean, we can fear the splitting of the atom because it can destroy us,
Right.
or it can give us unlimited energy. So it's not as much fear as respect, and put it in its right place. And that's where we have to be doing more thinking about this and using our tools to help us with our tools, as it were.
You know, when I think about what you just expressed, and thank you for those sentiments, Dr. Furness, there's such a very interesting and a few poignant considerations when we talk about this relationship with AI. And as preposterous as that may seem to some in present day against the media headline news, Luis, but I absolutely concur with Dr. Furness, not that he needed me to, but I do concur when we talk about this relationship or a human in the loop. Is what's been commonly expressed with this relationship with AI, thinking about it on the ECE level, thinking of equitable balance, collaborative decision-making, but more importantly, emotional and social learning when it comes to this relationship with these models. Because the reality is that they're multimodal, that AI can see, right? AI, I can have a conversation with AI in ways I have with a neighbor, with a friend. But moreover, I wouldn't be surprised to walk in my home one day and have sushi with Siri. And so I can speak face to face, and date night is friend night, and say, hey, what do you want to watch on Netflix? And so when I think about these capabilities, it does draw concern and consideration. But with the few minutes that we have left, I want to talk and roll this into ethics. We just had our SHE Summit a few weeks ago. For those that are part of GatherVerse community, shout out to the super hero engine. I know that many of you are out there today, but we talk about those who will help build, design, and create this technology. I know, Dr. Furness, you're such an advocate of being able to make sure we get these tools to our young people to be able to unlock what's in their minds. I've learned so much from you when it comes to that particular subject and more as a mentor and as my mentor. And thinking about, Luis, the things that you talk about when it comes to this relationship between this defining line of this virtual and physical interaction. And so my consideration is what are the ethical considerations of AI-powered spatial computing in creating these virtual experiences, Luis?
Yeah, so ethics become increasingly important because these technologies are so powerful, and we can't rely just on regulation and policy because it will never protect us in every way. And so it requires that developers and business leaders and industry leaders really take a very ethical stance where they're putting people first over their business success, people first over the aspirations of their technology. I mean, it is we're now at a point where we're developing AI technologies that have the potential to exceed human abilities. And it raises lots of ethical questions. And that means that business leaders need to be putting people first, because just because we can create an AI with certain capabilities doesn't mean that it's good for society. And it's, I often think back to, social media, right? The people who created these massive social media companies, they didn't set out to create something damaging to society. But if you poll most Americans, like over 65% believe social media is damaging to people, damaging to society. Did any of those early pioneers of social media want to create a technology that most people think is damaging to society? If AI and metaverse developers today aren't ethical, they're going to look back 10 years from now and say, why does everyone think the technology we created is damaging to society? And the thing is, like you mentioned, like a pretty remarkable technology, that the codec avatars, which are photorealistic avatars developed by Meta. And I had a chance to experience it last year at Meta. And it is, you can lean close to one of these avatars and they look human. Like the eyes look real, the hair moves. There's amazing things you can do with that. And if it's ethically deployed, that's amazing. You could, as you mentioned, you could have a digital twin of yourself that looks perfect. But if it's not ethically deployed, somebody could hijack that avatar, and now you suddenly have an evil twin that's out there, looks just like you, and is representing you in the world, or looks like a family member to who engages you to get your bank account information out of you. So every time one of these technologies becomes better, more powerful, like these purely remarkable avatars, there needs to be regulatory oversight, but it also means that everybody everywhere in the loop needs to be ethical, because it's the people, it's the engineers on the ground who will be the first ones to see how these things can be misused. And they need to raise their hand and say, you know what, here's a danger. Let's make sure that the regulators and the policymakers know what's coming. They know that these photorealistic avatars are about to flood the world, and you could very easily fool somebody into thinking that they're talking to a coworker and revealing company secrets. So again, I think ethics is the more powerful these technologies become, the more important that ethics goes down the chain to the people who are seeing the problems first.
That's right. Thank you, Luis. And Dr. Furness, if you can leave us and close us out here, as quick as it started, as quick as it goes. If you could leave with us a sentiment on what's the most important next step that we should be considering as we go and venture off into developing and building and hacking and making and coding and exploring and teaching and educating. What's the most important step that we should know on this journey, sir?
I mean, the first word that comes to mind is we need to remember that in the end, it's all about loving and respecting each other. And we build tools. Humans build these tools. And they are an extension of ourselves. And I believe that these tools are essential for us to be able to progress as a civilization. On the other hand, depending upon where our heart is and how we care about others, we can weaponize them. So that's what it's like being a human. We have choices to make, and they need to be informed choices of how we use the power that we have created and been given to us. And it's the use of that power, and hopefully it can help us become one in the way we think about how together we can save our planet and grow to the next level of our civilization. Because I think we are at a pivot point where it's like childhood's end. We're at childhood's end. We have to grow up.
Indeed. Dr. Furness, Luis, audience, you've heard it here at our first roundtable discussion here at a 2-day packed filled with humans, with people to express these sentiments at the intersection of humanity and AI. And what a great kickoff that we just had, because our gather was well. We have another extraordinary roundtable that's just right around the corner, but with a couple of remarks coming from Nathan and Jeremy, Dr. Furness, Luis, thank you for joining us today and spending some time. Take care and farewell.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks. Been fun.
Yep.